Ahoy toy, welcome to Transfixed, the channel that is so obscure you could blink and miss it and not even know its name until 20 years later. I say that because tonight we're going to be creating our very own Decepticon Welcoming Committee. Now, who are the Welcoming Committee and why are they important? Well, we have to go back to the very first episode of the Transformers cartoon, back in part 1 of More Than Meets the Eye. These were actually some of the first characters we saw in the cartoon, and they were actually the first Decepticons ever shown on screen. Now, it's confusing because some of them only appear for a second. It starts off with Bumblebee and Wheeljack in their Cybertronian modes. And only 2 minutes into the episode, they're driving along and they run into this roadblock that's set up by the Decepticons. The reason we call them the Welcoming Committee is when they spot them, Wheeljack refers to them as the Decepticon Welcoming Committee.
Uh-oh. A Decepticon Welcoming Committee.
Because some of them weren't named until years later, decades later. Now, when they first spot them in this wide shot, we see 5 Decepticons there. And then there's a close-up shot where we see the familiar Starscream, Thundercracker, and Skywarp, although Starscream is speaking in a different voice, which may just be one of the other characters. Now, this is the important shot that comes next, where we actually see the different colored Seekers. So this is the first time we really see what went on to later become named SUNSTORM, Hotlink, Bitstream, and then hiding in the background there, you might not even see him, is Nacelle.
Enhanced 224 to 176.
Although those names got kind of switched around, you may want to look at the TF Wiki article to find out more about these guys. But this is what I'm basing this project on. Interestingly, Wheeljack just barrels through these Decepticons, and we don't see these Decepticons again. We only see him run over Starscream, Thundercracker, and Skywarp, and then it's only Thundercracker, and Skywarp who transform into their Tetrajet modes and then give pursuit. We don't see Starscream until later on when he's back at the Decepticon base. So I don't know if he went there or if he was never supposed to be in this roadblock welcoming committee in the first place, because of these animation errors. It makes it very confusing. Now, I got most of my information from a blog post that I kind of want to call out here. It's Derek Smith's live journal, and this was published way back in 2013, so the pictures are sadly gone at this point, but I pored over this article. It was quite funny and informative for me. I did try to get a hold of him to see if I could have permission to use his photos and talk about it, but I didn't hear back. So just wanted to give him a bit of credit because, like I said, it's quite funny. He he kind of goes over this in detail to try to identify all the characters and even wonders aloud why he's going over it like it's the Zapruder film. And I thought that was funny. So that's worth a read. I'll link it below. But anyway, this is the first example of SUNSTORM and some other Decepticon Seekers that we've come to know and love since then, but we've never gotten really proper toys of them, so I want to make my own. So the short version is these 5 Seekers, we can't really identify them except that in the first shot we've got the yellow and white one, which has gone on to become SUNSTORM, not named until 2003 or 2003, I believe. And he's been produced, officially and unofficially since then. The other ones have been named Hotlink, Bitstream, and Nacelle. Nacelle is a bit extra confusing, but what I wanted to do is create a little squad of them because we haven't really gotten proper versions. I say that because there's so much confusion around the BotCon 3-pack that we got, and there have been third-party versions, but there's never been anything that quite nailed all of these. The long and short of it is, I just wanted to have these 4 because there they were on screen and I want them. Now, I've been giving a lot of thought about the best way to go about that. I'm far too lazy to create 4 custom figures, but I could create 2 custom figures. So what spurred me on to do this was when New Age released their Hotlink, because no other Hotlink has nailed the colors properly, and New Age made a perfect Hotlink. It's a small scale one, but it's got white biceps, white abdomen, black thighs, black hands, and white intakes, and the correct shade of purple. No other Hotlink on the market has gotten the color scheme this accurate before. In the cartoon, you actually can't tell what color the abdomen is. It appears to just be the body color purple, so that's open to creative interpretation, I suppose. So this would have been a difficult custom for me to do, but I don't have to. This is done, and it finally showed up after 3 months of waiting, which is really the big thing that delayed this video. I'll talk more about that at the end because I don't think everybody's interested in the behind the scenes, but whoa, this video. Anyway, so I've got a perfect hotlink, and this is my first New Age Seeker. It's really good. Now, Hotlink comes with a crap ton of accessories, but he does not come with the flamethrower with which he's pictured in the cartoon. So that's a bit disappointing. Tends to tip over backwards because of the way the heels are, but nice metal parts here help him stay up. So Hotlink is done. I have a Hotlink. Wonderful. Sunstorm is done because, like I said, of all the attempts, the only one that's got it right was the McFan's Toys, which is kind of a slightly upscaled knockoff of the DX9 Seekers. The New Age one is funny because there were some original prototype photos that showed it had the correct coloration on the shoulders and knees. But then the actual production model came out with white knees and white shoulders for some reason. So unfortunately, that one doesn't really work for me. And this is accurate. Sunstorm has the correct yellow, not orange, white hands, white biceps, white abdomen, white thighs, white here, white feet, and he is done. He's slightly larger, which I'll talk more about later. But there's two. Two of them are done. So we have a Hotlink, we have a Sunstorm. The size is close enough, I think. He's the only one that's a bit bigger than the rest. This one scales well with the DX9 versions. So there's two characters done. So now all I have to do is create a custom Bitstream and Nacelle. We'll start with Thundercracker first, and he's going to be the donor to become Bitstream. Now, all we have to do for him is change the biceps here to white, and the legs to white, and the abdominal area here to white. Now, for the biceps and abs here, those are going to have to be painted for sure, and because I hate painting white paint because it takes 1,000 coats, I'm going to use my old nail polish trick and use white nail polish. We'll use this Sinful Colors professional cheap nail polish that I got at Walmart. Now, we need to disassemble the figure to make it easier to paint, and also I wanted to swap the thighs because instead of painting the thighs, I thought I would be able to replace them because the McFan's Toys 3-pack comes with 3 bots with white thighs, and I don't need white thighs because I'm not going to use all of those. So the unlucky one became Acid Storm. I stole his thighs, and I was going to put them on, well, I did put them on to my Thundercracker to make Bitstream, and it was during this point in the about halfway through this project where I realized that these are not the same size figures. I didn't know that the McFan's Toys were slightly oversized from the DX9, so, and I didn't know that until I was already replacing the thighs. So this is a little glimpse of the future, but I needed to explain that because I got so muddled up in these problems that was the easiest way to explain it. Okay, so far so good. Now the good thing is there's a lot of ball joints on this figure, so the arms and legs can be easily popped off by hand. So these were quite tight, and this is on a joint here, so you want to be very careful with that. So what it is, I just warmed it up with a heat gun for a few seconds. You can use a hairdryer if you don't have a heat gun, and then just pull it apart by hand, being very careful not to twist or bend this pin. So that worked out fine. So what I've done is just painted the silver parts that were on his torso here into blue, and this is just a blue paint I had. It actually seems to be pretty close, not exact, but that's okay. I mean, it kind of evens out the shade. And then painted his gray forearms in the same blue, because it used to be kind of a charcoal. I suppose it's supposed to be black, I don't know. And yeah, and used white nail polish. I actually painted white here on the ab sections here because I was going off of an animation model that somebody had made, and then I looked at the actual cartoon and that's blue, so I thought, you know what, it's supposed to be cartoon accurate, I'm gonna go with blue, so I had to paint over the white paint, make it blue again. And one thing I did have to be careful of was popping these ball joints back together. I actually snapped this piece off, not completely off, but mostly off, and I had to heat it up and glue it back together, so hopefully that will hold. And then here's the forearm. So you can see I didn't paint inside there, of course. I did sand it down just a little bit because these are quite tight, as I mentioned. And of course the paint is going to make it harder for the weapon to fit, so I used a round file just to take off a bit of the over paint that I'd done there. And I think that worked out okay, so I can now reattach these. And this is different. Because of the transformation, this is just a regular ball joint. This one actually has an extra joint to allow it to do that for transformation because it lies underneath the plane mode. So I got a little bit extra paint there. This nail polish is good, but it just flakes off, so you do have to be careful with it. I put some top coat on it to protect it. Hopefully that will work. So I can snap this back on here. I'm going to use Acid Storm here to donate his white thighs. And then I'm not sure about the feet. You can't see his feet in the cartoon. And in the animation model that was fan-made, they're just like this. But I wonder if a white foot might look better. I haven't really decided on that yet. I think the white might be a nice accent color to go along with his hands and biceps. And the only one of these 9 that has any white feet is Ramjet. So I swapped the foot with Ramjet. And that looks pretty good. I may keep it with that. And then for the legs, as I said, these are pinned. I knocked these out using a nail set. This is something used just to drive nails all the way into the wood. So I used that and hammer after warming these up again with a heat gun. So on these type of pins, I don't know if you can see this, but there's a smooth end, and then the rest of it is kind of cross-hatched engraved so that it gets a good bite into the plastic. You can't put this nail set all the way through because the way it tapers like this, it'll break that plastic. Again, you want to be careful. There's not much there, so you don't want to split that by going in too far. So that's about enough. And again, I like to have this. If you can get the rough end out first, then you can take it out with needle nose pliers. There. So hopefully you can see that. So actually, it's mostly smooth, and then a rough bit on one end. So that came out this side. So I suppose the rough end of the pins are on the outsides of the legs. So I would knock the pin toward the outside. And yeah, I'm filming today because I had to wait for this set to arrive in the mail. Now these are knockoffs, which are knockoffs of the DX9 War and Pocket. And they're pretty good. I do notice some differences because all my other 6 are official DX9s. Now these ones I notice, I don't think DX9 makes these. Anyway, these have kind of a glitter in the plastic. I don't know if you can see that on camera. I think it's coming up. But this is the Sunstorm I wanted because this is color-wise a perfect Sunstorm. I don't have to do anything to change this one. Now I do notice things are looser. Everything is quite tight on DX9. I would say too tight in some cases, so that's not too bad that this is loose. Plastic feels a bit cheaper, but it's good enough. Now I had one break the first time I transformed Acid Storm, one of these pieces, like I mentioned on Bitstream. Oh, they're getting into character. On Thundercracker. So this broke off as I was transforming it, and I didn't notice it happen. And I don't know where it went. I mean, I did this at work, and it should just fell on the floor or my desk, and I cannot find it anywhere. So I may just break that one off to make it match. But yeah, this is actually quite a nice Acid Storm. I do like it, but I've got no reason to have it. And right away, I've broken it again. So yeah, this plastic is definitely weaker. As soon as I tried to remove the leg, the way I did with the other ones was by bending the leg inward so that it would come off the peg. That didn't work on this one. This snapped the peg right off. So for the other one, I put some oil in there and then rotated the leg around at the hip here so that the mushroom peg is not the one that pops off, and then pulled it this way, and that came off fine. So I'm gonna have to super glue that back on. Luckily, these are just going to be display pieces. I don't need to transform them back and forth, so I think if I glue that peg back on, it should be okay. So I've put a drop of Toolbox Buddy oil in there, and just move this around to get the oil worked into the joint. You can feel that's moving a lot better already. And we'll just use these needle nose pliers to pull it out, which worked. Now we'll super glue that back on. Okay, so let's do our leg transplant. This is the nail set that I used. You can see the tip is just the right size to fit in there, but it does taper, so as long as you don't go too far, you'll be fine. And just give it a few light taps. And then you'll be able to take a needle nose pliers and pull it out, the pin, take that off. This one's already prepared, so we'll take that off, and that's the wrong thigh. There we go. And so we can now put the white thigh onto Bitstream. And then I'll just get this started here. Alright, now I've put the legs back together, but I did learn something in that process. Now, the outside of the leg is a bit more flat the way it lines up, so I recommend you do it that side down and use a carpet or a towel, something soft. And unfortunately, these toys are not exactly the same size. I didn't realize this, but the knockoffs are slightly larger, so the pieces are not totally compatible. And I found that out because when I went to put the pin back in, it doesn't quite line up on the other side. I think it's good enough, but you can see that it hasn't gone all the way through, and it's kind of nicked the plastic here. If you're going to do this, try to use the same parts. So use knockoffs with knockoffs and official with official, because this is not exactly the same size. But it should be good enough if we carefully put it back together now. As I said, I'm not going to be transforming these, so I think it's okay if I've got slightly oversized thighs, and I don't know, I think that's a good enough Bitstream, good enough for me. And I do think I like the white feet, so all you gotta do is pop that off carefully, I suppose. It does help if you heat up parts before you take them apart. And I'm gonna give him Ramjet's other foot. Reminds me of that part in the movie where Starscream lost his foot escaping Autobot City. Foot. Alright, so that is pretty much a finished Bitstream. For the weapons, I happened to have some leftover Rust-Oleum, this color bluish, from doing some Robotech models. And that was a pretty good match to what I saw in the cartoon. And also, you might be thinking that the Hotlink that comes in that 3-pack is close enough to be the actual, to be Hotlink. And it is. It's pretty close. I painted these silver because they came white for some reason. So the thighs were white and these pieces were white, which is weird. And so instead, but it's just not as close as this, right? So yeah, I could have just painted the thighs black, painted the biceps white, and left these alone, and painted this purple. That's kind of a lot to do though, and because this was so good, I went that route. And what I did with this is just to make it sort of one of those Decepticon clone seekers that you see a lot in the season 1 cartoon. So I just painted the thighs purple, painted the intakes silver, and made him a clone. But you certainly could use him as Hotlink with a little bit of paint. And last but not least, now we're looking at Nacelle. Now Nacelle, I don't think has had any official toys except for this one from the Collectors Club. And this is a bit of a different Nacelle. This was based on a unproduced catalog image from way back in the day, from G1. Which is cool, but it's not the Nacelle from the cartoons. I don't think we had any third-party offerings for Nacelle, not that I am aware of. So this, I'm sorry, this one's done. This is already just, I basically painted him. But I'll take you through what I did and what I attempted. My first attempt was actually to dye the plastic. So I took my poor old Acid Storm here, and I looked up some YouTube videos on how to do this. I already had some dark blue dye. That I thought might work this RIT. I think RIT seems to have cornered the market on dye. It's fabric dye, but it works on other things as well. So this is a royal blue that I had that would have been a pretty good match. Now online I did find tutorials on how to dye plastic, and ABS, this hard plastic, is a harder plastic to dye than a soft porous plastic, of course. And they also said you got to use lighter colors. You can't dye anything lighter, you can only dye things darker. But I had very little success with this. So what I was trying to do was do a mixture. First I just tried water that you bring to a boil. You sort of simmer the water in a pot, add the dye to it, and let it take for about, I think it was 15 minutes. I tried a mixture with acetone. They also said you could do a 25% mixture with acetone. And this is serious stuff. This will melt plastic. So you got to be careful with that. I tried 25% acetone, 75% water, and it didn't work. I think I might have put too much acetone in. Just to warn you, this is what acetone can do. This is my Kylo Ren Star Wars figure that I just gave an acetone bath and covered up until he melted, because I hate these figures and I just want to see what happened. So that's what it can do. I think I might have gone beyond the 25% mixture because I noticed some warping. So if you look closely here, you can see that this whole cockpit part here has warped and parts have shrunk. I first noticed it on the leg here, so this should be a smooth seam right here, right? You can see where this is indented. That's from the acetone, I'm sure, and on this side as well. It's also caused some rapid corrosion of the metal pins, and you can see that the discoloration here is where the acetones faded the green plastic and failed to put any of the just a hint of the dye has seeped in here. Now I let this sit in the water for an hour actually, because it just wasn't taking. I wanted to see if longer would help, and it didn't. So that was a failure. This was bathing in boiling water and acetone and dye for an hour, and it still looks like this. So you can tell that did not work at all. Now, however, there were some parts that did die. So after that failed, I decided to use my DX9 Warren Pocket Starscream. So this is actually the Starscream figure from that 3-pack. So Thundercracker became Bitstream, and my Starscream ended up being Nacelle here. So that's why he has a little smirk and a darker face. But basically, I just had to paint the thing. Oh, sorry. What I was trying to tell you was that some pieces did take the dye. So this is composed of 2 different types of plastic. Most of it is the hard, smooth ABS, but a couple pieces are a softer, more porous plastic, which would be the upper arms. That's too dark to show, but this, it would have been this piece here. These little connecting pieces on the DX9 are made of a soft plastic. This is not, but on the DX9 it is a soft plastic. So those totally turned blue. And dye, of course, is a much better option if you can get it to work, because it just stains the plastic to that color, so you don't have to worry about paint rubbing off or any of that. I wish it had worked, but yeah, so these pieces were dyed, and the upper arms. Oh man, this project has been going on so long, I've forgotten some of the details. I'm so sorry. But anyway, the takeaway is that dye does not work on these figures. So I just painted it. So what I did is I luckily, again, I had a color here. This is 328 Mr. Hobby Mr. Color Blue FS15050, and I think that's a pretty good sort of navy blue. I don't know, there's something rich about this color that I liked, and that seemed to match what little we could see. There's very little of Nacelle showing in the cartoon. So most of the pieces I just painted that color. Again, the white was the nail polish, and then this gray. This gray was just a dark gray. What's this called? Deep gray. I believe this is the one I used. This is just a cheap acrylic paint that I picked up at Michael's. So that's why there's a bit of a different finish. I should have used the same type of paint, because the blue is more glossy than the this. This is very flat. And then what I did in the end was I took a spray can of satin clear coat and just sprayed the whole thing to protect it. And that worked out okay. The problem with that was that it kind of changed the finish. He's got the satin finish now, whereas before he was more matte all over. And I kind of preferred it the way it was before. I thought the gloss would look like plastic, but it looked a little bit better before I hit it with the clear coat. So be careful with that. But it does sort of even it out a bit. Like I said, these were very matte. These gray parts. These weapons I didn't paint at all. They were already in this sort of gunmetal color. So yeah, so again, I mean, you know what Starscream's colors are. The hard part that I really wanted to avoid was these stripes. I had to mask off the stripes with tape and just paint. And I kept doing it backwards too. So you put the tape over the stripes, obviously, if you're thinking straight, and then just paint around it. And that worked okay, but you can tell I rushed it here and got a little bit of a spillover. And it's not perfect on the back here, but you know what? I was running out of patience at this point. You can kind of see in the back here, this is the more matte finish to the legs. But I mean, with this guy, I'm not going to transform it because the paint's going to rub off. Nice thing is that the good thing about that dye taking to the upper arms is that the ball joints got dyed. So that's why these joints are nice and, well, they're pretty loose actually, but they were dyed. So that was nice. I didn't have to worry about painting those. I did paint the shoulders just to even it out. So you can see inside here, these pins, those took the dye as well. So that's blue dye. And at some point, I guess this canopy popped off, and I decided to glue it back on with my fancy super glue that's not supposed to cloud the plastic, but somehow it did. So that's another unfortunate little mishap with Nacelle, but otherwise it's okay. I think it's passable. Nacelle is very much a background character, if there ever was one, and he's going to stand in the back of this squad, which I can now show you completed. So let's get them together. So So there at long last is my squad of welcoming committee seekers, and I'm happy it's done. It took a long time, mostly because of shipping. So if you made it this far, you may as well hear the story. I started this project back in like May, I think it was. My plan originally was, like I said, I could customize 2 of these guys, and I thought, well, I'll do that whilst I'm waiting for the other 2 to show up in the mail. So I ordered the New Age Lahara here, the Hotlink, and then I ordered this 3-pack to get Sunstorm, and I started customizing these 2 guys. And I got Bitstream done pretty quickly. I think it took me about a week for that. And maybe 2 weeks later, it took a while for the Sunstorm guys to show up, and then I could start work on trying to use those parts to customize. I was kind of waiting for those to do. Like I said, I thought I could customize Acid Storm and some of those bits into one of these, and it didn't work out. So that was a bit of wasted time. But during all that time, I was still waiting on Hotlink Lahara here to show up. It took about 3 months for him to finally arrive. So with these ones in hand, I started doing that part swap, and then I ran into that snag halfway through where I realized they weren't the same size figures. And you can see it's not terribly obvious in the end result here. The other 3 match up much better, of course. But I thought, okay, I'll plow ahead. I'll fix this. I'll edit this together and keep on going. And then I put that on hold for a while when I got as far as I could go. And then I was thinking, geez, what am I going to do? I've been teasing this video a little bit and just waiting for so long. I really wanted to get it done. And I thought, I'll just go ahead. I'll record what I can do. And since I don't have to customize Hotlink, once he shows up, maybe I can edit him in or just show him at the end, or maybe I'll just have to go without. I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do. But when I sat down and decided to do some editing, the hard drive where I keep all my YouTube videos started to develop problems and errors, and it was failing. Luckily, I managed to salvage some of my YouTube work. Most of the old stuff is gone, but this project I was able to salvage, thank goodness, and get the drive repaired enough that I could keep that part. So that caused a bit more delay. It took me a few days to get my computer back up and running properly. So it was just such a perfect storm of problems I had. Once that got all done, though, suddenly Lahara showed up, and I was like, great, okay, now I can buckle down and finish this. I had to go back and record new audio and re-edit this stuff and take out some of the animation video I had because I didn't want to get any more copyright claims. I mean, I've won 2 copyright claims so far using footage and audio, but I didn't really want to go through the trouble again, so I replaced some of those with still images, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if anybody's interested in this sort of behind-the-scenes stuff, but yeah, but it was it was quite a challenge. It was a lot of things went wrong, so I'm happy it's done, and now I can put these guys up on the shelf. And most of all, I'm happy I can show them off to you guys so you can see them, and maybe... My hope was always that something I do is helpful to somebody, so that's why I'm putting it out there. So hopefully, if you're doing some projects like this, you might get inspired, or you might avoid some of the problems that I ran into. And also to get some feedback from you guys who are watching, because oftentimes you guys have some tricks and tips and things to share with me that help me out. So that's about it. I just realized I need to put some Decepticon logos on these 2 fellas, so I'm going to do that now. And I'm going to thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. Good night.